The Crusades, an era of religious warfare, political intrigue, and cultural clashes. These were not just battles between knights and warriors. They were a series of campaigns that shaped the course of history. Imagine a time when kings, knights, and even common peasants took up weapons and traveled across continents, leaving behind their homes and families. Their goal? To reclaim lands they believed were sacred, lands that had been fought over for centuries. The Crusades were more than just war. They were journeys filled with faith, sacrifice, and ambition. But what exactly were the Crusades? Why did so many risk their lives, crossing deserts and mountains to fight in distant lands? Were these wars purely religious, or were there deeper motives, political power, wealth, and control? And what impact did these conflicts have on the world, both then and now? Join us as we dive into the fascinating history of these holy wars. From the rise of powerful leaders to the brutal battles fought over the Holy Land, we will uncover the truth behind one of the most dramatic and complex periods of the Middle Ages.
Welcome to Chrono Whiz. Dive into history with me. Your time here will be worth it. Let's get started.
To understand the Crusades, we must go back to medieval Europe. The 11th century was a time of deep religious devotion, but also great political struggles. The Christian world, led by the Pope, was divided into numerous kingdoms and empires, constantly at war with one another. At the same time, the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Christian stronghold, faced increasing threats from Muslim forces in the Middle East. During this period, the idea of religious warfare gained momentum. The Church held immense power, influencing not only the spiritual lives of people, but also the decisions of kings and nobles. Pilgrimages to the Holy Land, modern-day Israel and Palestine, were common among Christians as they sought to visit sacred sites, especially Jerusalem. However, the region had long been under Muslim rule, and tensions were growing. In 1095, a dramatic event changed everything. Pope Urban II, addressing a gathering of church leaders and nobles at the Council of Clermont, gave a fiery speech that would alter the course of history. He spoke of the suffering of Christian pilgrims, the expansion of Muslim rule, and the need to reclaim Jerusalem. His words ignited a spark across Europe. He called upon knights, soldiers, and even ordinary men to take up arms in the name of God. He promised those who fought not only earthly rewards, but also eternal salvation. This call to arms spread like wildfire. Across Europe, thousands of people, knights seeking glory, peasants looking for a better life, and deeply religious believers, began preparing for what would become the First Crusade. They would set forth on a journey filled with hardship, bloodshed, and faith, forever changing the course of history. In the year 1095, a pivotal moment took place in the city of Clermont, France. Here, Pope Urban II gathered a vast audience, nobles, knights, priests, and common people, to deliver a speech that would forever change the medieval world. With a commanding voice, the Pope spoke of Christian pilgrims being harassed and attacked on their way to the Holy Land. He described the suffering of fellow Christians under Muslim rule and urged the audience to take action. But this was not just a call to defend the faith. It was an opportunity for glory, honor, and salvation. Deus vult, God wills it, the Pope declared. This phrase became the rallying cry of the Crusades. He promised that those who joined the fight would be absolved of their sins and granted eternal reward in heaven. For many, this was an irresistible offer. Knights saw it as a chance for adventure and prestige, while peasants hoped for a better life beyond their daily struggles. Even criminals and debtors saw the Crusades as a way to redeem themselves and start anew. As the Pope's words echoed through the assembly, emotions ran high. Some fell to their knees in prayer. Others pledged themselves to the cause on the spot. The Crusades had begun, not just as a military campaign, but as a movement that would inspire generations to come. From kings and noble lords to humble farmers and monks, thousands answered the call. They would embark on a treacherous journey across continents, facing unimaginable hardships, all in pursuit of a sacred mission. Little did they know, the path ahead would be paved with both glory and devastation. The First Crusade was a brutal and bloody conflict. In 1196, thousands of crusaders set out from Europe, answering the Pope's call. They traveled through treacherous landscapes, enduring extreme hunger, disease, and attacks from local populations. Along the way, some groups of crusaders turned on Jewish communities in Europe, massacring innocent people in the name of religious purification, a dark and tragic aspect of their journey. Upon reaching the Byzantine Empire, the Crusaders formed an uneasy alliance with Emperor Alexios I, who provided them with supplies and guidance. From there, they advanced into the Middle East, facing fierce resistance from Muslim forces. Battles raged across Anatolia, Syria, and Palestine, with countless lives lost on both sides. In 1199, after 3 years of hardship, the Crusaders finally arrived at the gates of Jerusalem. The city was heavily fortified, and the battle was fierce. After weeks of siege, the Crusaders breached the walls and stormed the city. What followed was one of the most infamous massacres in history. Men, women, and children, Muslims, Jews, and even some Christians, were slaughtered in the streets. The Crusaders had achieved their goal, but their victory was stained with blood. The First Crusade had succeeded in capturing Jerusalem, but it was only the beginning. More crusades would follow, each bringing more conflict, destruction, and cultural change to the medieval world.
The Muslim world did not stand idle. In the 12th century, a powerful leader emerged, Saladin. Known for his intelligence, military skill, and sense of honor, Saladin united Muslim forces and launched a campaign to reclaim the Holy Land. In 1187, his army decisively defeated the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin, leading to the fall of Jerusalem. The loss of Jerusalem was a crushing blow to Christendom. In response, European rulers launched the Third Crusade, led by some of the most famous kings of the time, Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip the Sand of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. However, the journey was treacherous. Barbarossa drowned on the way, and Philip left early, leaving Richard to face Saladin alone. What followed were some of the most legendary battles of the Crusades. Richard and Saladin were both brilliant commanders, leading their forces with strategy and bravery. Though Richard won several victories, he could not recapture Jerusalem. After years of fighting, both leaders recognized the need for peace. In 1192, they signed a truce. Jerusalem would remain under Muslim control, but Christian pilgrims would be allowed safe passage to the Holy City. Though the Third Crusade failed to reclaim Jerusalem, it cemented the reputations of both Richard and Saladin as two of history's greatest military leaders. Their conflict, filled with war and diplomacy, became one of the most famous episodes of the Crusades.
Over the next 2 centuries, multiple crusades followed, some aimed at the Holy Land, others directed at different enemies, including fellow Christians. One of the most infamous was the Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204. Originally intended to reclaim Jerusalem, this crusade took a shocking turn when Crusaders, instead of marching to the Holy Land, diverted their forces to attack Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire. At the time, Constantinople was one of the richest and most powerful cities in the world, known for its towering walls, golden churches, and vast treasures. However, political disputes within the Byzantine Empire led to a controversial alliance between the Crusaders and a deposed Byzantine prince. When promises were broken and tensions rose, the Crusaders turned against their Christian allies, storming the city in April 1204. The attack was brutal. Constantinople's walls, once thought to be impenetrable, were breached. Crusaders poured into the city, looting churches, palaces, and homes. Priceless relics were stolen, gold and jewels were taken, and sacred sites were desecrated. Even the Hagia Sophia, one of the greatest churches in Christendom, was pillaged. Thousands of people were slaughtered in the chaos. The sack of Constantinople had devastating consequences. The Byzantine Empire, weakened and divided, would never fully recover. The event also deepened the divide between the Catholic and Orthodox churches, increasing hostility that lasted for centuries. Instead of uniting Christians, the Fourth Crusade had torn them apart. Though later Crusades attempted to reclaim the Holy Land, none achieved the success of the First Crusade. By the late 13th century, the era of the Crusades came to an end. The wars had reshaped Europe and the Middle East, leaving a legacy of conflict, cultural exchange, and profound historical change. By the late 13th century, the Crusades had lost their momentum. The once mighty Christian armies had dwindled. Many Crusader states had been recaptured by Muslim forces, and the European kings and nobles, exhausted by endless wars, had lost the will to continue. In 1291, the city of Acre, the last major Crusader stronghold in the Holy Land, fell to the Muslim army of the Mamluks. The battle was fierce, but the Crusaders, outnumbered and outmatched, could not hold the city. The fall of Acre marked the official end of the Crusader presence in the region. Those who survived fled back to Europe, leaving behind a land forever changed by centuries of war. The Crusades left behind a complex and lasting legacy. They deepened religious divisions between Christians and Muslims, fueling animosities that would last for generations. However, they also led to cultural exchanges, as European knights and scholars encountered the advanced knowledge and technology of the Islamic world. Ideas in medicine, science, and philosophy flowed between civilizations, influencing the Renaissance and shaping the future of Europe. Though the Crusades ended centuries ago, their impact is still felt today. They were a time of faith and fanaticism, of conquest and loss, of ambition and sacrifice, and they remain one of the most fascinating and controversial chapters in history. The Crusades were not just wars fought over religion. They reshaped the world in ways that still affect us today. Over 2 centuries of battles, journeys, and cultural exchanges changed Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. But what was the true impact of these wars? First, the Crusades deepened the divide between Christians and Muslims. The wars created lasting hatred and mistrust between these two religious groups. For centuries, both sides remembered the violence and destruction. Even today, the memory of the Crusades influences global politics, with religious tensions still present in many parts of the world. However, the Crusades were not only about conflict, they also connected different cultures. As Crusaders traveled through the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic world, they encountered new ideas, inventions, and traditions. They brought back knowledge of advanced medicine, mathematics, and science from Muslim scholars. They also learned new agricultural techniques, military strategies, and artistic styles. This exchange of ideas helped spark the Renaissance, a time of great learning and discovery in Europe. The Crusades also changed how people in Europe lived. Before the Crusades, most people lived in small villages under the rule of local lords in a system called feudalism. But as knights and peasants left to fight, cities grew larger, trade expanded, and people started to rely less on feudal lords. This shift weakened the feudal system and gave more power to kings and merchants, helping Europe move toward a more modern economy. Trade between Europe and the Middle East increased during the Crusades. European merchants, especially from cities like Venice and Genoa, established new trade routes. They brought spices, silk, and other valuable goods from the East, making Europe richer and more connected to the rest of the world. These trade routes would later play a role in the Age of Exploration, as European explorers searched for even faster ways to reach Asia. Even in warfare, the Crusades left a lasting impact. European armies learned new tactics, including better castle-building techniques and improved weaponry. At the same time, Muslim forces also adapted, developing stronger defenses and battle strategies. These military advancements influenced future wars in both Europe and the Middle East. The Crusades may have ended centuries ago, but their effects are still felt today. They shaped international relations, influenced religious identities, and contributed to the rise of new powers. While they brought destruction and suffering, they also encouraged progress and cultural exchange. History is full of conflicts, but it is also full of lessons. The Crusades remind us of the dangers of religious extremism, but they also show how different cultures can influence and learn from one another. Understanding this complex past helps us make sense of our present and build a better future. The Crusades, wars of faith, power, and ambition. For nearly 2 centuries, knights, kings, and commoners fought and died for control of the Holy Land. These wars shaped history, leaving behind tales of heroism, betrayal, and unimaginable bloodshed. But were the Crusades truly about religion, or were they driven by the desire for land, wealth, and power? Were they a noble quest to defend Christianity, or a violent tragedy fueled by greed and political ambition? History is rarely simple, and the Crusades remain one of the most debated events of the medieval world. Even today, we can see the impact of these wars. The castles, the legends, the rivalries, they all remind us of a time when the world was divided by swords and shields, yet connected through struggle and survival. The Crusades changed the course of history, shaping nations, cultures, and religions in ways that still affect us today. But what do you think? Were the Crusades a justified cause or a tragic chapter in history? Should they be remembered as acts of faith or wars of conquest? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Chrono for more fascinating historical content. Your support helps us bring history to life, one story at a time.